It's kind of been over a month since the last actual video. I wanted this to come out on the 6th anniversary of Resident Evil 7, which depending on when this comes out is either today, tomorrow, or yesterday. But yeah, I'm covering a horror game, which is a complete genre shift considering the last thing I talked about was the second damn Sonic movie. Now, before I begin, this contains spoilers for the entirety of Resident Evil 7. If for some reason you haven't played that, go do it now.
Welcome to the family, son.
Resident Evil 7 was released 6 years ago. Jesus Christ, I feel old. Resident Evil 7 was a godsend from the heavens to reboot the Resident Evil franchise from the hell that 5 and 6 put it in. And as a reboot, it did an amazing job. Resident Evil 7 is different from the predecessors in pretty much every way possible. Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3 had a fixed camera angle, whereas 4, 5, and 6 brought it into the third-person whereas 4, 5, and 6 brought us into a behind-the-shoulder camera type system, and then Resident Evil 7 brought us into first person for the first time in Resident Evil's history, which was a pretty awesome change. But the changes don't stop there. We got a whole new cast for the most part, which has its ups and downs. Its downs mainly being that Ethan has pretty much no character. He's just an empty shell of what Claire, Leon, and Chris were. It's honestly sad, but that's just a small part of the game. Where it falls flat in its characters, it makes up for in its world building and atmosphere. The atmosphere in this game is impeccable. When this game wants to scare you, you can goddamn believe it's gonna make you scared. The start of the game is a great example. I remember being a scared little girl curled up in the fetal position, scared shitless. The opening of any game is meant to be a point where you hook the player in and make them want to see the rest of the game. And man, this game hooks incredibly well. The monsters in this game are pretty cool. They do a great job being the game's generic zombie type enemies. They can range from little guy dies in 5 shots to the head, all the way to big guy spits acid, who is way too hard to kill. As I said, they are pretty generic, but overall they get the job done, and I personally think the mold monsters are more creative and cooler than the Lycan from Resident Evil 8. Now I should probably talk about the bosses. I'll start off with Mia, who isn't really a boss. She's weird in the fact that you don't really get to fight her. The only points where you do kinda get to is the choice of the game, which I'll get into later, and other than that, she only really goes hostile a couple of times, which, if it's your first time playing, and you don't see them coming, are pretty cool. With that said, she's only really a tutorial. Now, I'll get into the Bakers, who are the main bosses. I'll be starting with Lucas, which may seem like a weird decision, as he's the last one you meet, but you'll understand later. As I said, Lucas is the last one you meet, and possibly the worst of them all. In the Baker's house, you will eventually make your way to Lucas's childhood home, and it quickly makes itself clear he's kind of a genius from looking at his many engineering trophies. But reading his diaries reveals that he's no wimpy kid. A kid named Oliver was bullying Lucas. Now, let's play a game of guess what Lucas does next. Will he A, tell a grown-up, B, beat him up, or C, lock him in his attic until he dies and decomposes? If you answered C, you are this week's winner! Yeah, that's right, Lucas was a little murdering psychopath from an early age. Now, you may be like, oh, so the mold extremified his psychotic tendencies? And the answer is no. Lucas was actually sent a substance that completely cured him from the mold's grasp. Yes, that's right, Lucas isn't controlled by the mold like the others. He's just an insane psychotic murderer. I wonder who that reminds me of. He stuck around to see what would happen to his family and conduct his experiments on random people. Now, with that in mind, I think Lucas is the worst of the Bakers. Now, what a better way to move on than from a psychotic murderer to a bug woman. So Marguerite is the second boss you meet. Quick rundown, you fall into the ground, she then starts throwing bugs at you, and in response you shoot her legs out, making her fall into the hole. She then proceeds to melt into goo. She then ungoops and becomes 8 foot. She is a pretty easy boss, as all you have to do is shoot the goo pussy. Anyway, yeah, you eventually kill her and get the MacGuffin you needed to progress the story. Have I mentioned that Marguerite loves bugs? Like, really loves bugs. Like, if she could, she would dump Jack and marry bugs. Talking about Daddy. Yeah, Jack is the main boss of the game. What do I mean by that? Well, you fight him the most in this game, since, for some reason, the mold turned him into the purple guy, so he always comes back. You fight Jack the first time when you find your way into the garage. Not even a minute into the fight, he tries to commit vehicular manslaughter on you. You then meet him for the second time when he decides he wants to go all-American psycho on you, and grabs a damn chainsaw. Luckily though, there's a spare for you, and you end up cutting Jack into legs. I wish I was kidding, he's just legs. You meet Jack for the third and final time when he decides he wanted to be a giant slug. Again, I wish I was kidding. After a while, you find out that you have to use one of the syringes that you made to cure Mia and Zoe. Kill big ol' slug dad, which surprisingly works. But since you used one of the syringes, this brings you into the choice of the game. The game doesn't really have any points where you can have a different experience from other people. Other than one point in the game where you have to choose whether to inject Mia or Zoe. And at first, this seems kinda cool. Like, whoa! You get to choose between your wife and this random girl you only just met? Yeah, it's not that cool. And even if you do choose Zoe, she dies pretty much instantly. And, oh, look at that, Mia's on the ship anyway, so it's the same as if you chose Mia. The only cool part is when Zoe dies. And if you do pick Zoe, Mia gets really angry that you picked her. So, you end up killing her, and thus she's not there in the ending. The only real choice in the game, and it only gives you 3 different scenes. The choice is the worst part of the game by far. This game's soundtrack is actually insane. I want to talk about the main theme for a second. Go Tell Aunt Rhody is the main theme to RE7. It's not a new song. The producer, Michael A. Levin, based the track off a traditional folk song from hundreds of years ago by the same name. It's kinda insane how Michael turned a somewhat cheery old song into such a dark theme. And then we have the game's OST, which I no joke have been listening to for the past few weeks. The songs provoke such a somber and chilling feel. It makes you feel on edge every step of the way. I should probably talk about the reason the whole story happened. So, pretty much, Mia works for an evil company who I can't be bothered to remember the name of. It's surprisingly not Umbrella, who were trying to ship a bioweapon called Eveline somewhere, and on the way, Eveline escaped captivity and crashed the ship in front of the Baker's residence. The Bakers found Bakers found Eveline washed up, and being the nice people they are, or were, took her into their home, but oh no! Eveline is evil and turned Margaret into a bug woman and Jack into the purple guy. So it turns out that since Eveline escaped, she didn't get her daily injection of Nolan pills, which made her body age extremely quickly. That's right, the old lady who has been watching you the whole game was behind it all. Why am I talking about Eveline now? Well, I have to talk about the boss fight. That's right, the final boss is Eveline, as you probably know because you've played this game. Definitely. Eventually, you find your way back to the starting house, and have to go through the memories of Mia being a bitch from the start of the game, as you make your way up to the attic and towards Eveline, blocking her attempts to fusardal you away. You eventually make it to Eveline and inject her with some antifreeze you found on your way, but instead of killing her, it only makes her angrier, and she turns into a giant writhing mass of mold, and just starts beating the absolute shit out of you. Eventually, a helicopter drops down a pack-a-punch pistol, and you fuck Eveline's shit up. Oh yeah, and then Wish.com Walmart Chris Redfield looking ass drops out of the chopper. In conclusion, I personally think this 6-year-old game holds up, and really well at that. It's nowhere near the best Resident Evil game, but it's one of my favorites. It has its flaws. A lot of flaws. But it did an amazing job at rebooting the series and bringing Resident Evil to a whole new audience. The game is like $30 on Steam, so even if you have played it before on another platform, it's definitely worth picking it up again and having a great time. I hope you like this retrospective. I know I already made a video on 2022, but I just want to thank you again for everything. 2023 has just started, and this is the first of many big projects I have for this year. Oh shit, right, 7 out of 10.